This is a photograph of my grandson, Joshua, and he's holding little Summer. Summer's my great-grandchild. And this video this morning is going to be about sowing seeds. Come with me as I take you over to my garden. Here is my garden. Now you'll see here some little seeds that have come through the ground. Right, there's some more of them over here. These are carrot seeds and parsnip seeds that have just come through the ground. Over here we have some potatoes which are starting to flower. There's some beetroot there and some tomatoes. And over here we have beans. They've finished flowering and the beans are about ready to be harvested. Just a couple more weeks and we'll be harvesting those beans. Here are some lettuces. We'll be eating those shortly, and there is some silver beet, some cabbages, some beans and some peas. It won't be long we'll be eating the peas. There are my potatoes over there. They're about to come into flower. Once they come into flower, they'll be ready for harvesting at about Christmas time, which is in 2 or 3 weeks' time. This is a spray bottle. I'm going to use this spray bottle this morning to kill these things here, which is weeds. See how the grass is growing up through the concrete? Right around here. And I'm going to spray this grass this morning. That's weeds that are coming up through the concrete. All weeds, right? And I have to spray them with weed killer. You'll notice I've got some netting over my garden. I've put netting over it. And that's to keep the cats off, so the cats and the birds won't get on the garden. Right? So we have to protect the garden, and that's why I've got the netting there. Good morning, Ron Bishop here, Timaru, New Zealand. Why did I show you my little grandchild, great-grandchild? She's a great-grandchild called Summer. Born in the summer, Summer Sykes. And why did I show you my garden? Well, this morning, every Sunday morning, I come online and I do a sermon, a Sunday sermon. And today I want to talk about sowing seeds. Now, the reason I showed you little Summer was because she's just a baby. She's just starting in the world. And everything that people say to Summer and how she's treated, they'll be programming her little brain, because her little brain will be taking in all the information, and she will become the kind of person she will become will depend on what information other people have been putting into her brain. And it's the same with the garden. The garden is growing. It started as a seed. I had to prepare the ground. The garden is growing, and it takes a while before the harvest. So there is a period between the sowing of the seed and the harvest. The sowing of the seed in our mind, it goes in when we're very young. And whatever happens to us in life depends on what we put into our mind. What we put into our mind plus what other people put into our mind. And the seeds in the ground, when we plant a seed, it grows into a plant. That was a vegetable garden you saw of mine. So we're going to eat those. That's going to become food, what's in the garden. But it doesn't just happen there. It has to be watered. It has to be tended. We have to get rid of the weeds. Okay? So we've got a very good garden. If we look at the Bible, the first book of Moses is called Genesis. And if we come down the page to verse 11, it says this: Then God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, that herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree, and that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed in itself on the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind, and God said that it was good. Fast forward to verse 27 of Genesis. It says this: So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. And God said, I see I have given you both every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it shall be for food. In verse 8 of Genesis, the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put man, whom he had formed. And out of the ground the Lord God made every tree grow, and it's pleasant in the sight and good for food. The tree of life was also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We look back at little Summer, the newly born little baby, and we see that she's come from a seed that God planted in the mind of a man. And this is the seed, my grandchild and my great-grandchild, which both came from the seed. When I first became a Christian some 30-odd years ago, I had no idea what was in the Bible. I didn't know anything. All I knew is that I had had a traumatic mental breakdown, and it was getting the best of me, so I called out to God and asked God to come into my life and take over, because I couldn't handle my life. But it wasn't until I started reading the Bible that I realized that we're all born with a mind, and I started to become interested in the power of the mind, because whatever goes into our brain, whatever goes into our mind, we become. Some of you may have read books on this. Some of you may have been watching videos. There's a lot on YouTube at the moment about the law of attraction. That is, we attract to ourselves that which we think about, and what we think about is what has been programmed into our mind. Now, we go out and plant the garden, we plant the seed, right? And when we put it in the ground, it doesn't just grow up into carrots or potatoes or whatever. It takes time. There is a time period between the planting of the seed and the harvesting of the food. And so it is with babies. So it is with life. There is a time between when we're born until we die. Okay? And what happens to us during that period depends what's been programmed into our brain. So there's a lot of rubbish that goes into our brain, a lot of information that is wrong, okay, that does not doing us any good. And the only way you can get rid of it is like the weeds in the garden. There are weeds that come up in the garden, and we have to pull the weeds out so the plants can grow. And we have to water them. We have to water the plants. Without water, they won't grow. And it's the same with our mind. We have to water our mind. We have to put into our mind good thoughts, good positive thoughts. Because, you see, there are only two kinds of thoughts. There are negative thoughts and positive thoughts. And the key to success is getting rid of the negative thoughts and replacing them with the positive thoughts. Getting rid of the weeds and replacing them with healthy plants. So when we look at my grandson Joshua, he's holding little Summer and he's talking to her. He's planting good seeds into her mind so that they will grow and she'll become a good person. Okay? Now unfortunately, some little babies are not born into families which have a lot of love and kindness and nice words. They live in an environment where there's a lot of arguments and yelling and screaming, and the wrong information gets programmed into their brain. And they grow up with all sorts of problems because of what other people have programmed into their mind. Now, becoming a Christian is very, very simple. God says this: if you want a better life, if you want to change the way you are, then you have to change your thoughts. And you can only do that if you sit down or kneel down in front of your bed and say, look, I've buggered it up, I've stuffed it up, I want to become a Christian. I want God to take over my life. That's what I did. I was just about to commit suicide. And someone said, have you tried God, Ron? Have you ever tried God? I didn't know who God was. I'd heard Mum and Dad talk about it, but I didn't really know until I asked him to come into my life. And when he came into my life, I changed. Lots of things changed. At that time, I was drinking a lot of beer. I was going to the pub every night. I was using bad language. And when I became a Christian and said to God, I want you to take over, these things automatically stopped. I stopped going to the pub every night. I stopped drinking beer by the gallons. I started drinking beer socially, just a few beers, without having to go and have about 6 jugs in the pub every night. You see? And I stopped swearing automatically. I didn't have to try. God changed me from the inside. Now, if you want to change your life, you have to change from the inside. You have to make that decision to change. You see, the biggest problem you have, if your life is not going good, is deciding to change. Make a decision to change. Look for a way to change. I became a Christian because I decided to change. And the book said you have to change what goes in your mind. I became a student of positive thinking books. I've read hundreds of positive thinking books. I've been to seminars, motivational seminars. I've had the good stuff programming into my mind. It didn't happen overnight. Like the garden, it just doesn't grow up overnight. It's taken me many years to reprogram my brain. A lot of people don't understand me. I'm different. I think differently to many people because I've programmed my brain to think differently. I learned many years ago that the crowd is wrong. Don't follow the crowd. Follow God. Do what God says. Become a Christian. Say, sorry, God, take over my life. And that's all I did. But when I did that, I started automatically meeting people that could help me. I started reading books, and I became a scholar in personal self-development. And now I'm 72 years of age, and every Sunday I come in here, and I'm talking about my life. I'm talking about what's happened to me. Because whatever happens to me, I had to change. I had to change my thinking. And you can change your thinking too. All you have to do is say, sorry to God, take over my life.